barrio. Que tú tirijala y que bien todo compones. Mentiras tuyas, solo mentiras, porque en el barrio hay mucha alegría.
All right, sir, can you just tell me your full name?
Gidi ina olela Hawaii. Aloha mai kako o Alika Kamakaala na mea pau yau sam changa kana o kanaka maoli o ke iwahi pana o kia kula Maui. He umi uhana wau e kana umikuma ewa kana 5 kolu, yeah? 1953 I was born. Keia maula nowadays, wau kana hiku, no kana ono kuma Ava. Makahiki o'u, yeah? So 69 years old.
69 years old, very good.
Yeah, 69 years old.
Just tell me a little bit about your childhood and how was it growing up? Did you grow up here on the island, on this island specifically?
I was born on the island of Oahu, and I lived there for about 65 years. And then I moved up here to Maui. So the island of Oahu, in those days, was not as busy as it is now. Mm-hmm. So now we have much more people, much more traffic and things like that nature. Hawaii back then was good days. You could go to the beach, and any time of the day you could go fishing, diving, and there was fish in the sea, and the beaches were open. You had a lot of families just camping out, no crime at all. People would just, plenty of aloha, that's what it was. And then everybody in school was, a lot of aloha, no bullying and things of that nature, and without any kind of, what they'd call, social interaction that they have now online and everything, much different than it is today. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So I really enjoyed my childhood. I had three siblings, 2 brothers and a sister. Mm-hmm. And then my dad, he worked at Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. Okay. Yeah, he was there at the Pearl Harbor attack, working that day when the attack came. So he told us stories about that. And my mom, she grew up on the Big Island of Hawaii. She's native Hawaiian, and she could olelo, speak Hawaiian. She grew up in the culture of Hawaii, but she also grew up on a ranch. So she was a paniolo, or a cowboy, yeah. Mm-hmm. But she was brought up like her grandfather wanted her to, treated her like a boy, yeah. So she was very tough. But yeah, they tell us many stories. My dad, he was pure Chinese, yeah. So he grew up in, his father came over from China, and so he grew up here in Hawaii, and he could speak Chinese. He spoke Cantonese. So my mother spoke Cantonese, my father spoke Cantonese, my mom spoke Hawaiian, but they never spoke to us because it wasn't allowed there. They wanted us to learn English. And my mom, when she was going to school, she was like beaten for speaking Hawaiian because that's all she could understand. So that thing was in her all the time. You have to learn English. We're not going to speak Hawaiian. She always speak to her sisters or her father like that. And same thing with my dad. He spoke Chinese, but never to us. And they said you have to learn the Western ways. You got to speak English. So we never learned our languages. So right now we're in a Renaissance area where we try to learn from schools, and people brought it back like that. But actually,
before you continue, you mentioned briefly that there were more fish in the sea.
Yes.
what kind of changes did you see in the fish industry, or just fishes, you know?
Okay, what happened is a lot of things, environmental changes, disasters actually. We got a lot of runoff from development, golf courses, all this kind of stuff. Progress, my parents always talked about progress, yeah. So they saw progress as people building more things. My dad was saying, you gotta move with the Western world, so we cannot be held back. So a lot of subdivisions was built. They knocked down a lot of areas that the watershed would go into these areas, but they covered it up, so a lot of dirt went into the ocean. So the dirt kills off the reefs, and all the chemicals from golf courses all went into the water, yeah. So a lot of fish died, and the coral dying, and just more people wanted to dive, yeah. So the beginning part of our, when we were younger, you gotta jump in the water and you swim out. And you swim out to the reefs, and it's a hard thing. But as more people came in, affluent people that had boats, so they would just come out in boats and they would dive and fish, and a lot of times things would just get wiped out, yeah. Overfishing. In the older days, they used to have rules where it was unwritten rules back from the cultural days where certain times of the year you didn't fish for this food. You didn't take lobster. This kind of fish, you let them come out. But afterwards, people got greedy, and newcomers coming to the islands, they didn't want to follow rules. So they were just, when they take fish, they take little ones, they take anything. So that's what happened this is what I call near reef fishing, and then people with pole fishing. Myself, I used to go and swim out and fish like that when we were younger. But that's what happened, overfishing, not following rules. Certain areas now, they have banned fishing certain times of the year. Okay. So even those things, they have to have game wardens watch them, because people go in there at night and try and do that stuff. But it comes back. COVID really helped. It was amazing. COVID stopped everybody from coming in, stopped fishing, everything. And the ocean came back. The limu, which is a seaweed that we eat, came back. All the fishes started coming back. The water cleared up, and it was good. But now, things going back to the way it was. Yeah. So.
Is that why there's so many limitations now on camping sites and people at beaches and park, passes?
Yeah, we used to have camping rules. But not as much people, would really camp, and then some people would camp, locals, and they would stay the whole summer, and nobody minded that. But now with more people coming in and more locals in the island, the population, so they had to be stricter with all these permits, and then certain sites, and then right after COVID got released, more people came, and it was like an influx was more and more and more. So, and everybody seemed to be they so wanted to get out. All the people coming in, they were just going crazy, doing all this kind of stuff, overdoing things where you would go into private land. People are putting things on the internet. Go over here is a secret spot, but it wouldn't be secret anymore. Hundreds of people would go beyond the trails that we used to go, and nobody was there. Places like we used to walk up into the streams and waterfalls and go swimming, and hardly anybody was there. Now you cannot do that.
I've noticed that here in the mountains, there's no trails, and just really in the highest peaks, there's really nowhere to really walk.
Yeah.
Is it because it's sacred to the people of Hawaii, or it was just never developed?
Certain islands never developed because to get through there, you had to go to big ranches or plantations. People owned right around the top of the mountain, yeah. And usually that's either state land, but a lot of the other places is private owned, yeah. So you couldn't get through it. Certain places where you have national parks, they made trails. Island of Hawaii, big island, they have a lot of more trails. Maui, again, most of it's private land you got to get through, so they don't want to do that.
Okay,
They don't want to do that.
So you said there was a renaissance for language and dance and stuff. Can you explain a little bit about when it was like, do you remember when it was outlawed, or but when you were younger, or?
Well, when the Kingdom of Hawaii got overthrown, before that, Hawaii was one of the most literate areas. Everyone could speak Olele Hawaii, which is a language, and that was the main language of the kingdom. And then everyone could speak that. Didn't have to be Hawaiian. You know, Japanese people, Chinese people, they all spoke Hawaiian, and the Caucasian people, they all spoke Hawaiian. And once the kingdom got overthrown, first it got overthrown in 1893 for a little while, and then at that time the president was Cleveland, and he wanted to give the land back to Hawaii. So he ordered the guys to give it back. So the provisional government, which was run by the plantation owners and ranchers, they were American businessmen. They didn't want to give it back. So they made their own republic. And they dared the U.S. to come and arrest them. So there was a political thing where they said they don't want U.S. soldiers arresting American businessmen and maybe bloodshed and all that. So for a while, Hawaii was a republic. And those guys didn't want anything Native Hawaiian. So they banned, but that was 1893 and on. They banned in the schools, they banned Hawaiian dancing, everything, culture, everything. So from that time on, all Hawaiian culture was suppressed. Then after maybe 1945, at the big war, all the people was coming in, so we got a lot of military over here, everything was. So a lot of people started to think about, there's more to life than just the plantations and everything. They were getting educated outside, and some of the Hawaiians said, they should bring back our language, because everything that we had here in Hawaii was lost. And if we keep going like this, things could be lost. People are dying off that new language, knew the culture, knew the rules. So then around 1960s, late 60s, with all the movement about Vietnam and people trying to get back things, Hawaiian culture rose, So that was the time the Renaissance happened. People started protesting, trying to get back land, trying to take back bombing sites, and the hula came back strong, music. So that was when I was in high school, and we started. The people at that time at the universities, they started bringing back our language. So that's the time.
Wow. So, you talk a little bit about about taking back the land and how here in Maui specifically, and your experience with it. Can you share with the people how that worked here in Maui and how there was no land for the native Hawaiians, basically?
Well, a lot of the land that was very valuable to the plantation owners, to hotels, sugar plantations, the ranchers, was all kind of taken away. They used the legal system, they bought it, behind the door kind of things happened. So at that time, a lot of the more valuable spots were taken away. So at places like Ka'anapali, Kapalua, all that area, beautiful beaches, beautiful land. Those were the prime places taken away first. The hotels would go in there and they would just dig up sacred sites there. We had a lot of burial sites. Hawaiians used to bury the people in the sand because it was easier. So the big hotels was going in there and just bulldozing all this area. And so a lot of the Native Hawaiian organizations, they got together, and people that went into the University of Hawaii, Native Hawaiians, they got lawyers, or they became lawyers, and they fought for land. And a lot of these rules and the states have, it's on the books that you can't do this, but the guys were going around it and nobody was saying anything. So they just went up and you had to protest first to bring all this attention to it, and then they went into the courts. So a lot of places, the hotels had to back off and stop from what they were doing, because the whole coast would be whatever it is now would be worse.
Mm-hmm. Up here, you said that this is the only place you can find Hawaiians in Maui is here in this part of Hawaii in the homestead.
Yeah, a lot of Hawaiians. There's a couple of homestead areas down by the ocean. That's Kahului. They call it Paukukalo, and it's on the backside of Mount Kahalavai, Mount Kahalavai, which everybody call West Maui Mountains. So on that area along the beach is a Hawaiian home area too. And up here we have Keokea, the farm lots, and then Waihuli, which is a residential lot. Yeah. So this land is way too expensive for normal people to buy it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Across the road up here, Oprah has a ranch. She bought a ranch up here, right over the highway. So, and then down below we have like Jeff Bezos, and he's another billionaire. So he buys up acres of land.
So tell me, how did the Homestead Act come about?
Okay, Homestead Act in 1933, Prince Kuhio, he was one of our princes that were supposed to be in line for the throne of Hawaii. He got elected to Congress, and using his education, he put an act through the Congress, which the Congress voted for and let it go through, that the royal lands and lands that were overtaken when the government was overthrown would be set aside for the Hawaiian people. So the Hawaiian people could farm, raise their children, and have businesses and land. Because a lot of times they couldn't get loans from the bank. You go to the bank is all owned by the American businessmen or descendants of that, and they would have preferential treatment. And the church came in, would come down the first explorers, and the Hawaiians loved Christianity so much they gave land to the church. So the first missionaries that came, they loved God. They did all the things. Their descendants took the lands. The descendants changed the idea, and instead of going for religious, they started using it for their own profit. Yeah, so we lost a lot of land that way. So, but yeah, we got the Hawaiian homelands, and even that is tough because you need money to build homes on the land, because you have to follow these rules about zoning and all this kind of stuff. So the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, which is in charge of these lands given out, has a lot of problems with trying to put the Hawaiians on the land. Not enough money. And many of the Hawaiians have died on the list, waiting. So it's the past few years, they got more land, and not more land, they got more money. Over time, lands were taken, like the airport. The whole Honolulu airport is Hawaiian homelands. You're supposed to get money from that. You're supposed to pay it to the Hawaiian Department of Hawaiian Homelands, which is the agency overlooking the land. But they've been pushing that under the rug for a long time. From the time the airport was built I think in the 20s or something. Only recently they started saying we need, you're supposed to give us 10% or something like that, and they've been fighting it. So the harbors, that's all Hawaiian homelands. So we've been trying to fight back, and the court system, is tough. It's real tough, yeah. So, but now things are beginning better, especially with more people being aware of it. And before, you had to read a newspaper or things get hidden. But nowadays with the internet and more news things, more the sunshine law where things get looked at it's, more people can know that what's going on, illegal things.
Thank you, because I was telling you yesterday that I drove around the island and I couldn't find any Hawaiians.
Yeah, because you would see that Hawaiians are a minority on this island, and Hawaiians are a lot of times they're working in some jobs that you will see them, maybe construction or whatever. And a lot of people here moved in from the mainland, yeah. So and the land is so expensive. Some people over here moved away, yeah, to find jobs and things like that. So you're not going to see too much on this, especially Maui. You go to upcountry Maui, because of the expense of the land, a lot of people over here is not Hawaiian blood. You go down on the coast, so maybe way in some of the valleys that you may see some Hawaiians, but only in Hawaiian. You gotta go to Hawaiian events, then you go and see them. They all come out. We have hula festivals, music festivals, some things like that, but it's you have to see very much of us around. And then we're mixed blood too, yeah. So some of the Hawaiians, you might look like Hawaiians, but they are like a lot of Oriental, Chinese, and white blood, yeah. So.
So now you're here. Tell me a little bit about the activity. Where was it with the military activity that was here, and what happened with them? Can you tell me that story a little?
Ever since World War II, yeah, the U.S. when they was expanding in the 1890s, that's why they took Hawaii, because they wanted Pearl Harbor. So they wanted Pearl Harbor so bad. So when Cleveland, he couldn't give the islands back. So President McKinley, he came in, and he wanted the U.S. to be powerful in the Pacific and be as good as England or Germany or all those guys. So they took Pearl Harbor. So from that time on, Hawaii has been a main base, for the U.S. military. And then World War II happened, so they needed places to practice bombing and shooting and all that. So national security, they took all of it, the island, the little island over there, and even on Oahu, where I came from, I didn't know this, but a lot of valleys over there in the windward side, they use it as bombing practice. So a lot of native Hawaiian lands, they just took the families, moved them off the land. And they said they was going to clean up the land and give them back when the war is over. That never happened. Then Vietnam came, or Korea in Vietnam. So they keep keeping the lands and the islands over here. After the war finished, they kept the islands still. Yeah, they kept saying that they were going to clean it up. But so many years of bombing, they bombed the place. And the bombs are underground, unexploded ordnance. It's millions of dollars, and they say, "Oh, they can't do it. It costs too much to do it." So after a while, so much public outrage, and then was going on about Kaolave, so the island offshore right here, and they said that. It's not worth the bad publicity, and plus the war is over, the Vietnam War was over, and then they was cutting back on the military, so they said, "Well, we'll give back the island." So that's how they got an island over here. This island, at times, we're told the military, when they were bombing the islands for Vietnam, the military jets would come in so fast, drop their bomb, the bomb would bounce off the island. And one of our mayors was living down by Kihei, and a bomb went right into his yard. And sometimes when the ships was shelling the island, every once in a while they put too much powder in their guns that they would overshoot the island and hit into these areas over here. So more outrage was coming up, bombing, hitting the island, hitting our side. So after a while, we had people that would go over to the island. They would take the surfboards at night and paddle over to the island and say, "We're on the island now. You want to kill us? You can kill us." But they send back pictures and stuff, walking around showing all the devastation and saying, "This is our land. you guys don't really need it now, and then you're still bombing it, and the only way we can bring attention to this is to occupy the land. So then they would stop bombing it. Yeah, we had different kind of things about sailing across the Polynesians would come to Hawaii in the ancient days, and that island was set up as a navigation school. So that was a middle island. They call it the Pico, or the navel of this island chain. So they would train navigators. So from there you could go reading the stars. You could go all the way to Tahiti and back, and they used to do that all the time. So they set up all these shrines and wayfare, and the Navy, they came in and they shot it down with their cannons off the shore. They blew up a lot of stuff because they just saw it as, they didn't know what it was, I guess. So when we went to the island, we saw all that.
Can you tell me a little bit about what they did to the watershed?
Oh, okay. They had this Operation Sailor Hat, they call it. They wanted to see the effect of similar to a nuclear bomb going off, and they put ships in the water, just like they did in down in Micronesia. So they couldn't use an atomic bomb, so they brought in TNT. They stacked up a huge pile of TNT, equivalent, they were saying, to like 500 tons or something of TNT, and they parked ships around the thing. The ships were like mothball. They keep some mothball fleets in Pearl Harbor. So then they set it off, and then they had all these cameras. And explosion just devastated, left a huge hole in the island, and it broke the water table. Hawaiian Islands, they percolate, all the rain percolates through the lava, goes down and forms a water reservoir that sits above the ocean, ocean water that goes underneath the island. So each island had one of those. So when Kaho'olawe, when they blew that one, they made a hole. It went so deep, it broke the water table. So the fresh water, instead of being encapsulated, it broke out, and the water just leaks out into the sea now. So Kaho'olawe lost their water reservoir, so they don't have that anymore. And that you can't fix. To this day, there's a big hole in the island, and that's something the military did. Yeah, so that island, people, I've been on that island. We go, and a lot of volunteers go and try and replant trees and stuff on the island. But when you look at it, some places it looks like Mars, just nothing. And it's just hard. They call it the hard pan. So we try and grow things over there, but yet they rely on rainwater coming down and catch it in big reservoirs and things. But that's in the rain shadow of this island, so they don't get any rain most of the time. So that's what happened on that island for that one. So that the Hawaiians really felt bad about that. I mean, really angry. Can
you talk a little bit about the distrust there is now between like the the mainlanders and Caucasians and Hawaiians, and why there's so much discord between the two?
Well, the everyday people that come down here and visit, most of them, I would say like 90% of them, are all nice people, and they respect our culture. And they come, they look, and they see, and they love Hawaii, and they can feel the spirituality of this place, and they leave. But the people that come and buy the land, so they come and buy, they speculate, they want to develop, they want to make money off of us. Those are the people that leave a bad taste in the mouth of the Hawaiians. So sometimes, if the people over here, the native or local people, they look at everybody as being the same. They say, "Oh, those guys, we don't like them." And if those people, a lot of those local people, never left the islands. So if you leave the island and you see the rest of the world, there's a lot of people of all races that's good, that have the same values. It's the people that are, trying to chase the dollar, they're trying to build something, trying to make money. Those are the guys that that leaves a bad taste in their mouth. So that's why at times you see people angry with the visitors, and sometimes you need to educate the visitors. And a lot of them, I believe now, are more educated because of the internet. They're much better. In the 60s, they're coming down and they didn't know anything. And you know, at that time there was the ugly American syndrome, yeah. Everything America is right, everybody else is wrong. You know, our way is the best way. You people are ignorant, you don't know, you're not educated, and you're not modern. So, but nowadays people realize that that's not it, right? America is not the be-all of everybody. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's why we had discord among people. But yeah, it gets some angry young people. You know, those guys, that's the guys you gotta watch out for. Angry youth that not educated in that. You gotta look at all the people as being, they're good people. You know, there's some guys are not, but everybody's good, and give them the doubt, they're the benefit.
But I've noticed here that the Caucasians have a little less aloha than the mainlanders as well. I mean, it goes both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, because my experience here on the island has been, I face more discrimination, I guess, here than I do on the mainland. That was pretty shocking.
Yeah, sometimes you run into people, especially the ones that are transplanted. Some people are here pretty recent, you know. The ones that came and stayed for a while, they kind of know the culture. But some of the newer transplants, you know, they have all this thing that this is my place. You can't come here. Put up signs, and you know, you walking around, they look at you like, you know, you're a criminal or something like that. And you know, some people, they want to take over the beaches, close off the beach right away. We have people, they say, oh, this is our beach, and it never was their beach. You know, and so there's distrust among a lot of the people about new people coming in and putting up, you know, estates, and they say they're going to let people come through, or they're going to keep the old trails, let the people get to the beach to go fishing, whatever, and then they close it off. No. And that's what's happening with our, we get that TMT, they're going to build a big, gigantic telescope on Mauna Kea on a big island. And the thing is huge. It's supposed to be like equivalent to like a 30-story building. And they have so many telescopes already on that. And some of these telescopes are not being used. And they just abandoned, and nobody takes care of it. And then they said that they're going to be good stewards of the land and stuff. But in the past, when they built telescopes, what construction workers would do, construction sites, is so far away, they don't want to spend the money to take all the rubbish and all the hazardous material off. Just dig a hole and cover it. So you get a lot of hazardous waste from previous things. So now these guys come in and say, no, we're not going to do that. But once the thing gets rolling, nobody going to, you know, say, oh, you got to stop, because there's billions of dollars there to build that. So that's why all this distrust come in. They say, once these guys get their project going, they're going to, you know, not follow the rules. And then the politicians going to say, well, we're getting money. They're giving money back to the state, so we can't stop this project. So, you know, things like that. So a lot of times that's a lot of distrust coming on. It gets a lot of angry Hawaiians, and that they have had some protests stopping just putting people across the road and holding hands and everything so that construction can go on. And that pitted Hawaiians against Hawaiians, because, you know, the local police force, and it's all Hawaiians, you know, so. The thing that helped was our kupuna, our grandparents, they would sit down on the line. So they cannot get rough with the kupuna, yeah, because that's your auntie, your grandmother, your grandfather. So that would help. But a lot of things, we try and keep keep your culture alive. And what makes Hawaii special is the culture. You know, you can go to Puerto Rico, Jamaica, and everything. They get their own. And some of those guys, they lost it because when we went there, again, hotels, and then just the poor people. So they lost their culture. And we try not to lose ours. We almost lost it, you know, with all these hotels in Waikiki coming up and all the fish ponds taken away. So a lot of times that's sad. So what makes Hawaii different? So we keep telling people Hawaii is different. It has spirituality. It has, you know, you cannot lose that. That's why people want to come here. You know, they can go down to Guadalajara, Tijuana. They can go all kind of places like that. But why they want to come here? Because it's really different.
Anything you want to say to the people on the mainland real quick? This interview has been very, very good. I got half an hour.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
What message do you want to give to the mainlanders out there?
When you come to Hawaii, and Hawaii welcomes everybody that comes, just be respectful of our culture. Learn something before you come here. Read about our history. Read about how we were overthrown by the government. You know, the Native Americans up in the U.S., they lost their lands. Many people, island peoples in the Caribbean, they lost their land. And then just respect that each and every culture has value. And honor the value of the culture, honor the people. And then when you meet each other, you're going to feel the aloha when you come here. So thank you very much. Yeah. Mahalo, mahalo nui loa.
Oh, thank you, sir. Have a blessed day.
Okay, you too. Mahalo.
Dicen que tú eres el mejor del barrio. Dicen que tú eres el mejor del barrio. Que tú tirijala y que bien todo compones. Mentiras tuyas, solo mentiras, porque en el barrio